Hello there. Good evening and welcome to ABUJA Dispatch. And like we always tell you every week on this program, what we try to do is to examine issues and feature characters that are of national relevance. Let's start off this week's episode by looking at those stories that made up our news headlines in the outgoing week. Stay with us.
President Muhammadu Buhari has directed a 20% cut in capital expenditure of all ministries, departments and agencies of government following the impact of the coronavirus on the Nigerian economy. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed announced this move among other adjustments made in order to finance the 2020 budget. Government also said it will cut down on expenditure spending and review the medium-term expenditure framework to reflect the current realities. The framework has been reviewed on a benchmark of $30 per barrel. Government is, however, retaining production of crude at 2.1 million barrels per day, but it will also cut down on spending on upstream projects. Among other policies, government has ordered the suspension of recruitment in all MDAs except in essential services. The Nigerian Senate has urged the federal government as well as members of the National Assembly to donate to the 2 billion naira ABUJA emergency relief fund put in place by the Lagos State government. The upper chamber also directed its committee on petroleum downstream, gas resources and petroleum upstream to investigate the remote and immediate causes of the explosion with a view to preventing reoccurrence and report back to the Senate in 2 weeks. These were part of the resolutions made after adopting a motion on the need to investigate the explosion at ABUJA, a motion moved by Senator Adiola Solomon. The lawmaker had in the body of his motion noted that the explosion caused no fewer than 23 deaths. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Minister of Science and Technology to create the needful opportunities to ensure that Nigerian scientists work towards providing solutions to the nation's challenges of insecurity, unemployment, poverty, healthcare delivery, and power. Declaring open the 2020 Science, Technology and Innovation Expo with the theme Enhancing the Growth of a Diverse Economy Through Science and Technology, President Buhari noted that Nigeria's greatest resource is its human capital, assuring that his administration would continue to support human resources development. He also reiterated the commitment of the federal government to partnering with the private sector on science, technology and innovation development towards ensuring that science and technology plays a very important role in advancing the frontiers of knowledge for nation building.
Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has charged the Nigerian military to upgrade in the light of new sophisticated technological attacks being employed by developed countries. Gbajabiamila stated this at the capacity building workshop retreat organized by the Babajimi Benson-headed House Committee on Defense in collaboration with Policy and Legal Advocacy and Center for Strategic Research and Studies, National Defense College in ABUJA. According to him, Nigeria's military is straight-jacketed in its role in Nigeria. Chairman, House Committee on Defense, Babajimi Benson, in his speech said the retreat couldn't have come at a better time considering the spate of security challenges facing the country. Honorable Benson explained that the committee has continued to interact with the defense establishment with a view to finding lasting solutions to the security challenges in the country.
Welcome back. Nigeria is vast in tourism potentials, historic towns, and highly diversified cultural heritage, embodying people's traditions and belief systems. The capacity of these symbolic representations of people's values and identity to earn Nigeria's substantial revenue is not in doubt. However, the inability to transform them to tourism assets has been a major concern. This is the crux of our discourse on Dateline this week. Stay with us.
Tourism is reportedly the world's largest industry, apart from the fact that tourism helps in branding cities. Tourism is also capable of generating income for the government and businesses by drawing investors and temporal tourists. The Obasanjo administration of 1999 to 2007 hit the right chord when it directed attention to the culture and tourism section among its 6 priority areas of focus to consider when diversifying the country's economy. However, what we saw was a far cry to what their projection portrayed. From that economic dispensation to the present, Nigeria, that has over-depended on crude oil for her major source of energy, foreign exchange and revenue, has conceded and is still considering diversifying her economy.
I know that the federal government launched the national policy on tourism. And part of the content of that policy was to develop tourism right from the grassroots. Tourism is local government based. There is no place in this country that does not reside in any particular local government. And if you want to have a sound tourism policy, you must start from the local government. Because you understand the various festivals and the various activities that take place in every local government. Now you scale that to state level, and then you scale that up to the national level, so that you can have a very robust tourism calendar.
As the call for diversification becomes highly imperative, government at all levels in Nigeria and business investors ought to embrace cultural tourism as an alternative to the oil quagmire.
In all the community is a very important masquerade.
Tourism is one of the major sources of revenue to any government, and any reasonable government across the globe works out sustainable strategy to key into existing tourism potentials of that particular country. But unfortunately for our part of the world, we are not doing anything really very serious about tourism, probably because of the regime of oil. But unfortunately, oil is not a sustainable source of revenue. It dries up over time. It's something that if disaster occurs, you can't tap into the oil resources. But tourism is something that is not time-bound. It's timeless.
It wasn't like if these people wait for government to send them money before they can hold a festival, it may never happen. But over the years, they've collectively tried to put money together and host this festival to the extent that it has drawn national attention. That way, over time, state government, federal government have started investing into. So if we look at our diverse cultures, our tourism sites, and we ourselves begin to explore them to the world, then eventually the world will come to us.
According to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, tourism has been increasingly recognized for its potentials to contribute to the reduction of poverty through its geographical expansion and labor-intensive nature, which supports a spread of employment and can be particularly relevant in remote and rural areas where many of the poor people live. Cultural tourism has to do with the cultural advantages and uniqueness of a people, either man-made or inherited. Among the cultural heritage of a people that could be a source of tourist attractions are dances, music, customs, dresses, historical monuments, images, arts and craft, festivals such as New Year, traditional religious rallies, traditional marriages, and burials.
Many people don't know that you have the Idori Hills waterfalls. You go to places like Bauchi State. It's a beautiful site if you go to the Games Reserve there. All over the country, we have them everywhere. So the first thing is draw up a proper calendar and put them on the front burner, and then develop programs and products along those areas that can attract people to those places. If you don't bring people to those places, people will not go there.
By virtue of her ethnic plurality, Nigeria's cultural space is characterized by very rich and diverse manifestations, both tangible and intangible. These in turn have given Nigeria her peculiar colors, identity, and authority in the Committee of Nations. The Nigerian cultural festivals can also generate income for investors who are able to harness the unending economic potentials in them. Festivals are times when local businesses thrive on accommodation, security provision, production of souvenirs, flyers, transportation, and of course, material production of cultural artifacts. With the dwindling fortune of oil in the international market, the Nigerian cultural heritages can be maximally explored to provide a sustainable option needed for the growth of the economy. Time is upon us when investment in culture and tourism will provide the needed palliative alternative to the oil. Oil may dry up, but culture and tourism, even though affected by global trends, will continue to thrive on the sands of time.
Thanks for staying with us. In the last 2 episodes of the program, we shifted attention to the federal parliamentarians with a view to closing up with the key committees that pilot the operations of the National Assembly. In our next segment, Senator Okoyemi Bamidele, representing Ekiti Central Senatorial Districts, opens up on core topical issues relating to the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters. Join us again. Welcome to the split view segment of our program, ABUJA Dispatch. And on this segment tonight, we are having the pleasure of welcoming to our studio the Chairman, Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters, and Senator representing the Ekiti Central Senatorial District, Senator Michael Okoyemi Bamidele. You are welcome to our program, sir.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, Senate Committee on Judiciary, Legal Matters, and Human Rights. What's it all about?
Well, it is one of the committees of the 9th Senate, specifically dedicated to attending to matters of oversight and overseeing the continued establishment, enactment, and amendment of laws relating to matters that have to do with the judicial arm of government, as well as the justice sector, especially the Federal Ministry of Justice and the human rights community. So basically, the committee's oversight functions cover the whole judicial arm of government, the Federal Ministry of Justice, and the agencies under the Federal Ministry of Justice, as well as the National Human Rights Commission and other matters relating to the human rights community in Nigeria.
Now, since your assumption of this office, how will you describe the terrain? As in, what are those basic highlights of your activities so far?
Well, it's been quite interesting. We have been involved, entirely in 3 different areas. One, like I said, in the area of oversighting the judiciary. And for us, there's a need for very fundamental reforms in the judicial sector of our country. And part of what we also concluded from early enough is the fact that, yes, much as we need judicial reforms in this country, you are not going to be sitting down in the Senate or in the National Assembly to carry out reforms without involving the stakeholders, in the judiciary. So we have had to engage a lot with the various stakeholders, from my Lord, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, to the presiding justices of the Court of Appeal, and other appellate courts, like the Customary Court of Appeal, the Sharia Court of Appeal, and other related courts. We also have been engaged, with the various judicial bodies, including the National Judicial Council, and the offices of the chief registrars of the various courts, from the Supreme Court through the Court of Appeal to the Federal High Court, the National Industrial Court and the other courts, federal courts. And through all of these engagements, we have been able to, take some major steps, which I believe, by the grace of God, in the next few months, will yield a lot of results. We also, as a committee, had worked so hard in ensuring, a speedy passage, of the 2020 budget, of the judicial sector. Of course, along with working with other committees to pass the entire budget for the nation, which we all felt, ought to be done speedily to at least break the jinx, of what had been happening in the past, where the nation will probably not have a budget, an annual budget, until sometime around June or July. We were able to pass the 2020 budget in December of last year, and it was passed into law speedily by Mr. President in such a way that it took effect from January of 2020. This is tremendously affecting the activities, of different sectors, including the judicial sector. And beyond all of this, I also want to say that we have been working very closely with the Federal Ministry of Justice, through the Office of the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Federation, and of course the Office of the Solicitor General and other agencies that operate under the purview of the Federal Ministry of Justice. And we are all resolved to actually be able to carry out the necessary reforms that the nation needs, in this sector. Because our intention at the end of the day is to be able to grow a democracy that is founded on rule of law. And a democracy that is founded in rule of law, of course, would take both the judicial arm as well as the justice sector very seriously. So we have no doubt that this is a very crucial assignment that we have on our hands in this committee. And we've been working with the human rights community as well, especially through the National Human Rights Commission, which is a government agency, but government only to the extent that it was established by government and partly funded by government. But it's a commission that works more largely, with the human rights community at home and abroad.
When you talk about engagement with the public, because legal matters, constitution, human rights issues are more or less at the purview or even of the public, how has been your interface with the Nigerian people? What has been your take home from your interface with them so far? We know of public hearings and all that. What has been the way, their own perception of
I'll put it this way. It's for us to do what we have to do. It's for us to ensure that we are guided by overriding public interest in whatever we do. How you are perceived by the public sometimes is what you have little or no control over. You can only hope and pray, that you are in the good book of the public when you do it. But once you set a standard for yourself, it will be easier for you to deal with. We have set for ourselves a standard of overriding public interest as a driving force. We have set for ourselves the standard of compliance with global best practice. So, if that is the standard, then we are not guided by individual idiosyncrasies or we are not guided by emotions or peculiar interests, of any individual or group of individuals. But we are guided by that standard of ensuring doing what is in overriding public interest and what is consistent with global best practice standard. And I think to a very large extent, that has all really helped, our work in trying to ensure, that I mean, we deviate, from the conventional way of doing things some of the time. And part of the areas we have been able to have a lot of interface and engagement with the public directly is in the area of the public hearings that we have been organizing to ensure further legislative action with respect to bills that are consistently, from time to time referred to us from the plenary session, of the Nigerian Senate. And engaging with the public through public hearing has been very instructive, has been very, very engaging on its own, if I can repeat that word. And it's been able to also shape on our own decisions, because the truth about it is there's no Senate bill. There's no bill that is so special that it carries, the sympathy or support or sponsorship of all the 109 members of Senate. Every bill, either as an executive bill or a private member bill, is subjected to the procedure, the standard procedure of the bill passing through the first reading, of course, the second reading, and it being referred to the relevant committees to organize public hearing. Yeah. And then, of course, the third reading, and, eventually a bill is passed, and it still has to go to the other arm of the National Assembly, which is the House of Representatives, for concurrence before it goes to Mr. President for assent. So, essentially, every bill will have to pass through a standard parliamentary procedure. And it's for us to ensure compliance with such parliamentary procedure. And that's why sometimes it's kind of strange, when some members of public criticize senators over some bills because they pass through the first reading. I mean, for the purpose of trying to make the public to continue to understand the process of legislation that we're involved in, it's important that I further stress again that every bill, is deserving of a first reading. Any bill that is introduced in Parliament must go through that stage of first reading. It does not mean at that point that it has attracted the support, of the senators or the honorable members. We have had public hearing on some bills that generated a lot of controversy, but it was important for participants, especially members of the civil society, to understand that this bill generated as much controversy among senators themselves. Senators were as divided as members of public were, at the public hearing. But it's important that people don't assume that because a bill passes the stage of first reading, that bill has enjoyed the support of the Senate, and they begin to condemn the entire Senate or condemn the entire National Assembly.
Senator Okoyemi Bamidele is the chairman, Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters. Thank you for coming to the program, sir.
Really, my pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Federal government of Nigeria is restricting entry into the country for travelers from the following 13 countries: China, Italy, Iran, South Korea, Spain, Japan, France, Germany, Norway, United States of America, United Kingdom, Netherlands, and Switzerland. These are all countries with over 1,000 cases domestically of the virus. But what this really means is that we are suspending issuance of visas. And we are canceling all visas already issued to citizens or travelers from these nations. It will take effect from Saturday, and it will last for 4 weeks for the time being, while developments will dictate what will happen thereafter.
As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, you are all aware that oil prices have drastically dropped. And we know that this really will translate to a lot of sufferings on the part of Nigerians. Therefore, the President has graciously approved that the pump price of petrol should also accordingly drop.
So the pump price of petroleum, of petrol, will be from now 125 for now. If there is any further drop, it will even drop further.
That is how far time can permit us tonight on Abuja Dispatch, and it is our hope that you enjoyed tonight's episode. For further information, comments, and suggestions, you can join us on our various social media platforms. Thank you for allowing us to share your moments tonight on Abuja Dispatch. A week from now, we'll bring you another refreshing package. Same time, same station. Adegboyega Arogbodo is my name. Have a good night.